life. Well, I guess the most formative experience in my youth was being sent to a boarding school when I was 15. It was a very negative experience. I hated it there. It was very
Right.
militaristic. And when I came out of there, I was already playing around with drugs. So we moved to California. At that point, I was almost 18 and started taking all kinds of drugs and got very drugs became a way of life for me. And that was okay in Berkeley, California in the late 60s, but then that moved on for me to playing with opiates and getting psychologically addicted to opiates quite a lot. And that lasted for years across different contexts and different continents, which kind of ended up when I was back in Canada and going to university and taking morphine for the labs and so forth, and having a really hard time quitting entirely. Got into grad school and then got convicted for stealing drugs from a pharmacy. And then got kicked out of grad school, went back to square one, became a house painter, window washer, anything I could find, got back into mental health slowly but surely, quit drugs finally around age 30, and then finally got back into grad school in psychology. And then from then on, it was pretty much a clean run. I did really well and decided I'd like to be a professor, and felt like I had, from going from a place of intense insecurity to a place of recognizing that I had some skills and I could do this, and that I got a job at the University of Toronto as a professor. Went up the ranks to full professor and studied child development, especially emotional development and personality development. And at the end of all that, I kind of came around to addiction again, this time as a scientist, and studied I did a lot of neuroscience for the last 10 years of my stint in Toronto, looking at brains of kids who had emotional difficulties mostly. And got into studying addiction by looking at the neuroscience of addiction, looking at what goes on in the brain when people become addicted to drugs, to alcohol, to addictive behaviors, gambling, porn, sex.
How did you conduct those studies? How was that done?
You mean the neuroscience stuff with kids?
Yeah.
We use dense array EEG, 128 channel EEG. So you get a very, very precise temporal signal of what's going on in the cortex, but you also get some spatial localization. It's rough. It's not as fine as MRI, but it's together. You put together a picture of, really, you can look at changes and patterns over time, and that's what I was interested in. Before and after treatment, for example, or just changes in cortical function with development for kids with different levels of anxiety or aggression. That was what we did mostly.